What is the scariest thing you have ever experienced? 1. Got caught in a riptide 200 yards offshore with all of my family, including my at the time 6-year-old little sister. We all made it out fine except my dad. He was so exhausted from carrying my sister that he was barely able to stay afloat. They had to send a rescue crew to get him. We all made it out alive, thank God. I saw the words "except my dad" and "God" at the end, and I am so relieved he made it too. 2. Probably the aftermath of a grand mal tonic-clonic seizure in which I fractured a vertebra. I woke up on the ground with 2 strangers over me while I was in the worst pain I had ever experienced, and I didn't know where I was or who these people were. Turned out to be EMTs, or why I was in too much pain to move. They kept asking really simple questions and I just didn't know the answers, which freaked me out more. It was May and they asked what month it was. I thought really hard and didn't know, and I looked outside and thought it looked like August and gave that as my guess. They asked where I was. I didn't know that either. It turned out to be my living room. My girlfriend was also right there, having called the ambulance. They asked me my girlfriend's name. I said I didn't have a girlfriend. This was a very different form of negative emotion. I feel so guilty about that, even though there was nothing I could have done about it. I also feel guilty about having had a seizure in front of her because it scared the shit out of her. 3. Amphetamine-induced psychosis. I spent a period of time addicted to crystal meth, and the psychosis one goes through after having not slept for days at a time is scary. You see shadow people. You believe everyone is out to get you. Every conversation out of your earshot is about you. Your delusions become very real. At one point I thought there were leprechauns that were out to kill me. I saw the leprechauns. I heard them whispering and plotting against me. It's insane. I'm so glad that's in the past. 4. In my old job, I used to cycle home from work along the country back roads just before midnight. There were no streetlights along those roads and I hated cycling on the main road because I was anxious about being in the way of traffic. I had an LED light that was fixed to the front of my bike, though. Anyway, I was on my way back home from work one night, and after turning a corner, my light shone on someone who was sitting with their legs crossed in the middle of the road. And X200B, the guy was just sitting there in complete silence and darkness by himself. I pulled on the brakes and stopped in front of him and asked if he was alright. He just looked at me and said that he trying to get to a location that was approximately 20 miles or so from where we currently were. I told him that, and he said that he knew and that he was waiting for someone else. Then he got up and walked off into one of the nearby fields without saying anything. And X200B, I had another encounter with this same person a week later in the exact same spot. It honestly gave me the freaking creeps. Especially when he said that he'd found who he was looking for. Turns out the guy was waiting for a specific car to drive that way. The owner of said car was someone he loved, but was with someone else, and he was planning to kidnap her. I found this out when I saw his face in one of the local newspapers not long after this incident. He'd been arrested for sexual assault and attempted murder. 5. I once had my foot cut off in a car accident. The doctor reattached it. Lots of nerve damage. I fall down occasionally. Most of the time I don't. I worry that at some point in my life it will be amputated. I fear the concept of ruining my body. 6. My wife and I had already lost twins at 8 weeks and a daughter at 20 weeks and suffered under years of infertility. We had twins. They came early. Neither one was breathing, and my wife's BP was critically dropping. As a father in the year, I had 3 of the people I loved most in this world in severe medical distress, and I had no idea what to do for any of the 3. I was useless, in the way and paralyzed with fear about what was going to happen. I have never felt so helpless in my entire life. 7. I've actually never told this story before, but when I was about 7 I was lured into a shed by a person who had in the past sexually assaulted me. I guess they were afraid I was going to tell, so they tied my long shirt sleeves behind my back and slowly covered my nose and mouth with duct tape and left me laying there. It was like falling down a long tunnel. I had left my mouth open slightly, so I started pushing with my tongue to break the seal around my mouth as I worked my hands free. I managed to get out and I was so scared I never told anyone. It's honestly the only time I remember fearing for my life. That was attempted murder. If he's still alive you should report this. I know there's no statute of limitations on it, but proving it at this point would be impossible. Plus I don't think I could maintain the fragile grasp I keep on my mental health if I opened that can of worms. I keep tabs on this person if that makes a difference. 8. My wife was stationed in Hawaii when they had the false incoming missile warning. I was not. She called me and we basically said our goodbyes. Then she lost phone service. I thought that was it. She called me back only a few seconds later, but it seemed like an eternity. It's amazing how we just kinda glossed over this event. A whole state thought it was going to die because of a misclick and we kinda went meh. 9. I pour steel in a foundry. I've had a mold blow up on my legs causing 3rd degree burns down my legs. Still dealing with aftercare now about it. Edit. Thank you for the silver, my first ever. 10. Hearing a car crash right outside my apartment. Afterwards hearing blood-curdling screams of pain from the guy that was injured. That shit was too real. All the people gathering outside to watch and make sure someone called an ambulance. 11. When I was in high school about 10 years ago, I was home alone while my mom went to pick up my brother, and before my mom left she told me to bring the dogs in. Now we had 2 beagles. One that was friendly but barked loud, and an older one that we had gotten from the shelter was extremely protective and was not afraid to show his teeth. I ignored her and left them outside for a bit. I was in the back part of the house and was on the computer when I heard a noise. I walked to our front room and saw a young guy near the front door who knocked. I stood slightly out of sight and saw him walk near our window and then back to the door and knocked again, but also tried the door. Immediately, my blood went cold and I rushed to the back door and quietly yelled for the dogs to come in. They ran in and I herded them to the front room and I heard the mailbox slot open. Right away my older beagle got on the defensive and growled the "I'm gonna ducking bite you" growl while the other one barked. I got my phone and called my mom and begged her to come back home, which she did with my brother. They looked around and saw no other signs of entry. I triple check every door now, and even though those 2 dogs have passed away, I keep our current dog near me when home alone. 12. One day me and a friend were playing in the woods. We spent a good 3-4 hours there because it was sunny and a day before Christmas. We realized I forgot something there the next day. It's now Christmas Eve, and it snowed a whole inch overnight. As I'm walking to the spot where we were, I noticed that someone set up, in a previously trashed area that someone probably camped in, 5 expensive foldable chairs in a semicircle with a ladder and a noose in the middle. I bolted out of there because if someone is crazy enough to set that up in the middle of the night when it's snowing on Christmas Eve, then they might have still been there waiting for someone. 13. Having cancer the second time. 14. Let me preface this story with, I have a phobia of water I can't see the bottom of. Thalassophobia for anyone wondering if they have the same thing. When I was younger, my brother was driving me home, at night, from a 4-H model railroading meeting. This was February in Indiana and we were driving on country roads to get home. We came to a stop sign and when my brother touched the brakes to slow down, the SUV we were in went sideways on black ice. In an attempt to save it he overcorrected and we ended up in this slow angled descent into a drainage ditch. When the driver's side tire went into the icy black water of the ditch, the truck slowly lurched onto the driver's side and then upside down into the water. Black freezing deck began rushing into the truck and I nearly lost my mind. My brother put his hand on the ceiling and released his belt, and I tried to do the same, but being 5 years younger and in near panic I couldn't get my buckle undone, so I had to use both hands and fell into a clump on the floor. We clambered to the back of the vehicle and my brother began kicking the side window to no avail. At this point I had enough wherewithal to find a pair of my dad's needle nose pliers and shatter the rear windshield so we could climb out. The water was only like 2 feet deep, but I didn't know that while I was upside down and water began rushing in through the door seals, I cut the crap out of my hand, shattering the rear window. The most important thing that happened that frigid night was a douchebag in a Camaro blew right past us while we were standing next to the road, and then a couple in a minivan pulled up to the stop sign a minute later and drove us all the way home. Like 30 minutes out of their way. I still stop anytime I see someone in need because of them. 15. Growing up I had a bad relationship with my 3 older sisters, but particularly the one closest in age to me. There isn't one moment in particular but a series of them. When my parents would go off on dates, there were too many times where my sister ended up chasing me with a knife, and she wasn't just playing around. She meant real harm. We would spend 15 minutes on opposite sides of the table running around it, trying to prevent my sister getting close enough to stab me, all the while trying to get to the phone so I could call my parents. Then try to get to the bathroom because it was the only room with a lock on the door. She would then sometimes threaten to come into my room and kill me in my sleep. I would pile laundry baskets and dishes near my door when I went to bed at night so the noise would wake me if she tried to get in. My sister would get in trouble sometimes, but usually it was chalked up to normal sibling rivalry, and I was gaslighted by my parents into thinking it was normal. Edit. I am a girl. Yes, I'm out of there and okay now. I have cut all ties with my sister and am happy and safe now. My sister was like that. I broke my arm once when I was about 11. I remember the week I finally got my cast off. I still had to wear a brace. But I was out back playing with my family and my sister came up behind me and shoved me into the wooden fence without prompt. I threw my hands out to catch myself, brace and all, but I swear there was a look of absolute satisfaction on her face when I cried. I'm 30 now. 2 years ago she threatened to kill me, took the keys to my car and ducked with it, knowing full well I'd drive up and down the freeways daily. I haven't talked to her since. My life is better for